We are hearing from the judge that he has fined Donald Trump $1,000 for each violation of order. Karen Agnifilo-Friedman, this is incredibly significant because we were wondering where the judge's decision was. What do you make of what he's decided, how he's decided to carry this out?
So it's not surprising that he held Donald Trump in contempt and violating the gag order, because it was very clear that he did violate the gag order multiple times and continued to. The judge, however, was taking his time to write a written decision, which I look forward to reading and talking about when I see it. And that's what he has decided to how to handle this. And I'm sure he's warning Donald Trump what he can and cannot do in the future. Notably, he did start the morning saying you can go to your son's graduation before he held him in contempt, which, if you recall, Caitlin, prior to this, he never said he couldn't go. He just said, I'll let you know whether or not you can go. And today he's
despite Trump claiming publicly that he had barred him from it.
Hello, friends. John speaking. Good to have you back. A federal judge ordered Trump to testify immediately or face jail time are not verified. No credible outlet or court document confirms such an order. The dramatic story appears to be unsubstantiated, even as it spreads across social media. Now, here is what is actually happening, and it is very significant for understanding Trump's legal position and his interactions with the courts. Trump has faced real and documented court pressure to testify and to comply with legal orders from multiple judges and from Congress. Trump was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee to testify about his actions on that day. Trump has been held in contempt by judges for violating gag orders repeatedly in his criminal trials.
I mean, what do you make of that in the timing? Because he started with the good news and then he got to, well, I have also found that you have violated this gag order and I'm going to fine you. Obviously, $1,000 for each violation. We'll see how many, if it's all 10 of them. And we're told by Jeremy Arv that Trump did not visibly react as the judge was reading this decision, Paula. But I think the question has always been, what will actually deter him from violating it?
So one of the things that could deter him are conservative voices suggesting that he should stop violating the gag order and use that time at the microphones to campaign. And something we have seen over the past few days is just that. Now, it doesn't mean that the targets of his ire, like Michael Cohen, and at least one of the prosecutors who used to work in the Biden Justice Department, are not going to face any criticism. But we saw last week they were getting sort of creative in their way to work around, instead relying on GOP allies on the Hill to amplify some of these complaints that Trump and his lawyers have about one of the prosecutors, about the judge. That is one of their creative attempts to get around the gag order.
Yeah. And Jake, obviously a notable moment here is the Trump team was also waiting to see how the judge.
Trump has been warned repeatedly and formally by sitting judges that he can face jail time if he continues violating court orders. Trump has faced real legal consequences for his behavior in and around courtrooms over the course of several years. And that is all documented in official court records and verified news reporting. That is real, that is significant, that actually happened. Trump was subpoenaed by Congress to testify. That is real and documented through official records. Trump was held in contempt of court by Judge Juan Merchan. That is documented in court filings. Trump was fined thousands of dollars for contempt violations of a court order. That happened and is a permanent record. Trump was warned by the judge that jail time was possible if he kept violating gag orders. That is real and documented in court proceedings. That is the actual real story.
Was going to handle this. And he started off the first morning of this trial this week by saying, yes, the prosecutors did meet the burden of proof here.
Yeah, that's right, Caitlin. And then let's dive into all of that. And Laura Coates, as we await the hearing beginning today, Gary Farrow is back on the witness stand right now, and the judge has called for the jury to be brought into the courtroom. And when that testimony begins, we will bring you those updates, one after the other. But Laura, looking at what Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, his comments, where he was either retweeting, requoting, talking about the jury, talking about the quote-unquote two sleazebags who were witnesses. There really wasn't any factual matter about whether or not he had violated the gag order. It was just a question, I suppose. Here's the Michael Avenatti post. Michael Avenatti, of course, famously one of Trump's nemeses, but here he is. He's in prison, may possibly be angling for a pardon should Donald Trump be reelected.
That is what actually matters for understanding Trump's legal situation. Trump has repeatedly faced court pressure and contempt findings. Trump has been warned about jail time by a sitting judge. Trump has faced real documented legal consequences for violating court orders repeatedly. Let's break down what actually happened with these court cases and legal matters in detail. Let's talk carefully and in detail about Trump and his specific interactions with courts and Congress, because this is a very significant and well-documented pattern of behavior that spans several years. Trump has been subpoenaed multiple times by Congress and in various criminal cases filed by prosecutors. Trump has been ordered to provide important information or testimony by courts and by Congress. Trump has been subject to multiple different court orders over the years in different legal cases.
And Donald Trump on April 10th said, "Thank you to Michael Avenatti for revealing the truth about two sleazebags who have, with their lies and misrepresentations, cost our country dearly." I'm not going to go through all 10 of the alleged violations of the gag order, but or 9, I'm told. But it's not really a question as to whether or not he violated it. He was told he was not allowed to talk about witnesses, and there he is talking about witnesses.
Which poses the question, why would it have taken so long then for the judge to come to this conclusion? We knew that the writing was on the wall. It was an inevitable conclusion based on what you're saying and beyond. And by the way, the words, "Thank you, Michael Avenatti," coming out of the mouth of Donald Trump is just really fascinating to think about for a lot of reasons.
Just to remind people, Michael Avenatti represented Stormy Daniels.
Oh, didn't he famously have a huge poster board, I think, of Michael Cohen or Donald Trump's face and bring it on air to say, "Where is your client? I want to talk to this person about these issues."
But by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to be doing that throughout the show because of the news.
I've got kids; they do the same thing. It's fine.
I got news coming in from the courtroom. Again, if anybody in New York who has control over the judicial system wants to let cameras into the courtroom, please do. I don't like interrupting people. The judge just told Mr. Trump to take down.
Trump has been warned repeatedly and in very specific detail about his behavior in courtrooms and about violating court orders that judges issue. And Trump's response to these various legal pressures and court orders has been very significant and very revealing about how Trump views the courts and legal authority, and whether Trump believes rules apply to him the way they apply to other citizens. It shows us Trump's actual respect, or lack thereof, for the rule of law. Let's start with the January 6th committee, because that was a major and significant legal moment. In October of 2022, the January 6th committee officially subpoenaed Trump after extensive investigation. The committee wanted Trump to testify under oath about what Trump did on January 6th and his actions before that day. The committee wanted Trump to answer detailed questions about what Trump knew and what Trump did. The committee wanted Trump to provide testimony about his communications with others.
All of the offending posts.
Wow. Now that's significant, especially now it's been 10 minutes and the court has resumed. He's made these decisions already. He knows he has another hearing coming on Thursday. There are 4 additional violations. This is going to be a stark warning. The question will be, of course, whether $1,000 per fine is going to be him saying, "Okay, thank you, put it on my tab, I can do that." Or will jail time be an actual incentive for him not to do something about it? It works 2 ways, though, right? Of course, you have a judge's order saying that he must remove them from Truth Social and 2 offending posts from his campaign website by 2:15 p.m. today before court is out of session, which I note the judge wants to be able to look and see if he, in fact, is complying before he leaves his site. I would suspect it would have more consequence if it does not. But again, the graduated risk of having jail time over your head would be the ultimate penalty. This is a former president of the United States. Will that happen? It's unlikely.
Yeah, this was an obvious call. These were straight down the middle violations. There was no gray area or, well, you could see it either way. The only question for me is, why did it take this long? But now the judge has ruled. And I think the bigger question is, what happens next time? What happens if Trump posts more of these attacks on witnesses and jurors and other people who are off limits? I mean, the judge...
The committee wanted to hear testimony directly from Trump about his role in January 6th and the events surrounding it. And when the January 6th committee officially issued this subpoena to Trump, they made absolutely clear what would happen if Trump refused to comply with the subpoena. The committee said Trump could face federal criminal charges if he refused to respond to the subpoena. The committee said that refusing to testify when subpoenaed by Congress is a serious federal crime. The committee said that noncompliance could result in criminal prosecution of Trump personally. So Trump was under very real and significant legal pressure to comply with this subpoena from Congress. This was not a casual request or a casual suggestion. This was an official congressional subpoena with serious legal consequences for noncompliance. Now, in Trump's hush money criminal trial in New York, Trump has faced significant and real pressure to comply with court orders issued by Judge Juan Merchan. Judge Merchan issued a strict gag order in the criminal case to maintain the integrity of the trial and protect all parties involved. A gag order is a court order that legally restricts what people can say publicly about the case, especially about evidence, witnesses, and the trial itself. The gag order was specifically designed to protect the rights of defendants and to protect the integrity of the trial proceedings overall. The gag order was also designed to protect witnesses from being intimidated or harassed through public statements by Trump. The gag order was designed to protect jurors from being influenced by outside commentary or statements from the defendants. But Trump repeatedly and deliberately violated this court order. Trump made public statements about witnesses in the case attacking them. Trump made statements about jurors that could influence them improperly. Trump made social media posts that clearly violated the gag order. Trump violated the judge's order repeatedly and apparently deliberately on multiple occasions. And because Trump repeatedly violated the gag order issued by the judge, Judge Merchan took formal action against Trump. Judge Merchan held Trump in contempt of court. That is a serious legal finding and serious legal consequence. Contempt of court means you violated a court order intentionally and deliberately, knowing it was wrong. Contempt of court shows clear disrespect for the court's authority and the judicial system. And in April of 2024, Judge Merchan fined Trump thousands of dollars for these contempt violations of the gag order. That is real. That is documented in court records. That is a permanent court record. Trump was held in contempt by a judge. Trump was fined money as punishment. Trump was held in contempt and punished by the court for violating a gag order that was designed to protect the trial proceedings and to protect the witnesses and to protect the jurors involved in the case. This was not a slap on the wrist. This was an actual contempt finding with actual monetary punishment. This was a judge saying, Trump violated my court order and Trump is going to pay money for that violation. But here's where it gets even more serious and more significant and more concerning for Trump's legal future going forward. When Judge Merchan held Trump in contempt and imposed the fine for violating the gag order, the judge also warned Trump very clearly about potential future consequences if Trump continued violating the court order. Judge Merchan warned Trump specifically that if he continued to violate the gag order in the future, jail time was a definite possibility as a consequence. The judge said explicitly that incarceration could become the real consequence if Trump kept breaking the court order that the judge had issued. This was not a vague threat. This was a specific warning from a sitting judge to a defendant that jail was on the table. So Trump has been formally and officially warned by a judge in a criminal trial that he could go to jail for violating a court order. This is not speculation or theory or political opinion or something people are debating. This is real. This is a documented warning from a sitting judge. This is in the court record. This is a formal warning from a judge that jail time was on the table as a real consequence if Trump violated the order. Again, that is significant legal pressure on Trump. That is real legal jeopardy for Trump personally. That is a serious and documented threat of real consequences if Trump continues violating court orders. Now, Trump also has a fundamental legal right to testify in his own defense in any trial where he is a defendant. That is a basic constitutional right that every defendant has under the law. That is part of the right to a fair trial in America. So when Trump says or implies that he is not allowed to testify, that statement is not accurate. Trump absolutely can testify if he wants to testify. Trump can take the stand and testify in his own defense in any trial, but Trump has chosen not to testify in his criminal trials. Trump has refused to take the stand and answer questions under oath by prosecutors. That is Trump's choice to make. Trump has the right to testify and the right not to testify. But Trump does have the constitutional right. Trump is not being blocked from testifying by judges or prosecutors. Trump is choosing not to testify, which is a different thing than being prevented from testifying. That is an important distinction to understand. So the pattern we see is that Trump has repeatedly faced court pressure to comply with orders and to comply with subpoenas. Trump has been subpoenaed by Congress to testify. Trump has been ordered to comply with gag orders in his criminal trial. Trump has been held in contempt of court by judges. Trump has been fined monetary amounts as punishment for violating court orders. Trump has been warned that jail time is possible if he continues violating court orders. That is the actual documented pattern of Trump's interactions with the legal system. That is what the court records show. And that tells us something very significant about Trump's relationship with the legal system and Trump's willingness to comply with court orders and congressional subpoenas. It tells us that Trump does not automatically and immediately comply with legal orders. It tells us that Trump apparently believed he could push boundaries and violate court orders. It tells us that even after being held in contempt and fined, Trump did not immediately change course and start complying fully with court orders. It tells us that Trump continued violating the gag order enough that judges had to keep warning him about jail time. That pattern is important and it is documented. The viral claim about a judge ordering Trump to testify or face immediate jail, that specific order is not verified in current news reporting. But Trump facing real court pressure, real contempt findings, real fines, and real warnings about jail time, that is absolutely verified and documented. That is the real story. That is what matters. Let's break down what this actually means and what is really happening with Trump in the courts in terms of his legal obligations. Trump has been subpoenaed multiple times by Congress and in various criminal cases over the years. Trump was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee in October of 2022. The committee officially wanted Trump to testify under oath about January 6th and Trump's specific actions before and during that day. The committee wanted Trump to answer detailed questions under oath about what Trump knew about January 6th before it happened. The committee wanted Trump to answer questions about Trump's actions on that day and Trump's communications with others. The committee wanted to hear testimony directly from Trump about his role in January 6th and his involvement in the events. And when the January 6th committee officially issued the subpoena to Trump, they made absolutely clear what would happen if Trump refused to comply with it. The committee said Trump could face federal criminal charges if he refused to respond to the subpoena and provide testimony. The committee said that refusing to testify when subpoenaed by Congress is a serious federal crime that carries real penalties. The committee said that noncompliance could result in criminal prosecution of Trump personally and could send him to prison. So Trump was under very real and serious legal pressure to comply with this subpoena from Congress. This was not a casual request or a casual suggestion that could be ignored. This was an official congressional subpoena issued by Congress with serious legal consequences threatened for noncompliance. Trump had real legal obligations. That is significant pressure on Trump. That is real legal jeopardy. That is Trump facing real legal pressure from Congress to testify about January 6th. Trump has been held in contempt of court by Judge Juan Merchan for repeatedly violating a gag order in his criminal trial in New York. Trump violated the court order multiple times by making public statements about witnesses and jurors in the trial. Trump made statements that violated the order. Judge Merchan found Trump in contempt of court, which is a serious legal finding with consequences. Judge Merchan fined Trump thousands of dollars as a financial penalty for violating the court order. Judge Merchan also warned Trump that if he continued violating the gag order going forward, jail time was possible as a real consequence. These are real legal consequences with real teeth and real impact. These are documented in official court records. These are not allegations or theories or speculation. These are official documented court findings in official court orders from a sitting judge. Trump has been formally found in contempt of court by a judge. Trump has been fined monetary amounts as actual punishment for violating the order. Trump has been warned by the judge that jail is possible. That tells you definitively that Trump is not automatically complying with court orders the way most people do. Trump is facing real, documented legal consequences for that pattern of noncompliance. That is significant and important. The specific viral claim that a judge ordered Trump to testify or face immediate jail as a new recent order is not verified in current news reporting from major credible news outlets that actually cover Trump's legal cases. I searched for this specific claim thoroughly and carefully. I looked at major news outlets and their recent coverage of Trump's legal cases. I looked at court filings, I looked at legal documents. The specific claim, as stated in the viral headline, is not supported by verified reporting that I can find anywhere. What is verified and what is documented is that Trump has faced real court pressure to comply with court orders and congressional subpoenas over a long period of time spanning years. What is verified is that Trump has been held in contempt for violating court orders that judges issued. What is verified is that Trump has been warned by sitting judges that jail time was possible if he continued violating court orders. What is verified is that Trump has been under congressional pressure and legal pressure from Congress to testify before Congress. But the specific claim about a brand new immediate jail order for not testifying in a recent court ruling, that is not documented in verified news reporting from credible sources. And that matters because credibility matters a lot when reporting on any public figure. We have to stick to what is documented and verified through court records and news outlets. When we make claims we cannot verify, we undermine credibility. This matters significantly because it shows that Trump has a consistent and documented pattern of not automatically and immediately complying with legal authorities and court orders over a long period of time. Trump has been subpoenaed by Congress, and prosecutors have threatened criminal charges for noncompliance. Trump has violated court orders repeatedly and deliberately, knowing they were court orders. Trump has been held in contempt of court by a sitting judge. Trump has been fined monetary amounts as actual punishment for violating the order. Trump has been warned by sitting judges about jail time as a real consequence. This pattern tells us something very important about Trump and how he views the law. It tells us that Trump does not automatically comply with legal orders or subpoenas like most other people do. It tells us that Trump apparently believes he can push boundaries and violate court orders without serious consequences. It tells us that judges have had to impose real financial consequences to try to force compliance with their orders. And even with fines and contempt findings already imposed on Trump, Trump apparently continued violating the gag order enough that judges kept warning him repeatedly and formally about potential jail time as an escalating consequence. That tells us that, despite real consequences already being imposed on him, Trump's behavior did not immediately change the way you would expect it to. The underlying reality is that Trump has a clear and documented pattern of not automatically complying with legal authorities and court orders at every turn. Trump has faced real legal pressure from Congress and from judges in multiple different cases. Trump has faced real legal consequences, including serious contempt findings and monetary fines for violating court orders. Trump has been formally warned by judges that jail time could be the severe consequence if he continues to violate court orders. Trump's behavior in and around courtrooms repeatedly has led judges to impose real consequences and to warn Trump about potential incarceration. That is the documented pattern. That is what the court records show. That is what matters for understanding Trump's relationship with the legal system and his willingness or unwillingness to follow court orders. This pattern tells us something important about Trump. It tells us that Trump does not view court orders the same way most people view them. It tells us that Trump apparently believed he could push boundaries and violate court orders without serious consequences catching up to him. It tells us that even when judges imposed fines and contempt findings, Trump apparently continued to violate gag orders enough that judges had to repeatedly warn him about jail time. It tells us that Trump's respect for court authority is questionable. When a sitting president repeatedly violates court orders, and faces contempt findings, that raises serious questions about whether the rule of law applies equally to everyone, including the president. So the real story is not that a judge just ordered Trump to testify or face immediate jail today or in a recent court order handed down yesterday. The real story is that Trump has repeatedly faced court pressure to comply with orders and to comply with subpoenas from Congress and from courts over many years. The real story is that Trump has been held in contempt of court for violating court orders that judges specifically issue. The real story is that Trump has been warned repeatedly and formally by sitting judges that jail time was possible and on the table if he continued violating gag orders and other court orders. The real story is that Trump has a consistent and documented pattern of not automatically complying with legal authorities and facing real consequences for that pattern of non-compliance with court orders. The real story is that judges have had to impose fines and contempt findings to try to force compliance with their official orders. The real story is that a sitting president in a second term has violated court orders repeatedly despite being warned. That is the actual documented story verified in court records. That is what is verified and real. That is what matters for understanding Trump's respect for court authority and the rule of law in America. The dramatized version of that story claimed that a judge just ordered Trump to testify or face immediate jail as a new current court order. That dramatized version actually undercuts the real and powerful story about Trump's documented pattern of violating court orders repeatedly and facing real legal consequences. When we make unverified claims about new dramatic jail orders, we give ammunition to people who want to dismiss all criticism of Trump. We weaken the real story about Trump's documented contempt findings and real fines. We undermine our own credibility as a source of information. The real story is powerful enough on its own. Trump's pattern of not complying with court orders and facing consequences is serious enough on its own. We do not need dramatization. We do not need to make unverified claims about new jail orders. The documented facts about Trump's contempt findings and judges' warnings speak for themselves. Let me expand on what this pattern actually reveals about Trump's behavior and mindset. When a defendant in a criminal trial is held in contempt of court, that is a serious matter. Contempt findings are not issued lightly. Judges do not impose them unless they have clear evidence that a court order has been violated. The fact that Judge Merchan found Trump in contempt multiple times indicates that the violations were clear and documented. The fact that the judge imposed financial penalties indicates that the violations were serious enough to warrant punishment. The fact that the judge warned Trump about jail time indicates that the judge believed Trump's behavior was serious enough to escalate consequences. All of this is documented in court records that are publicly available. When a defendant receives a warning from a judge that jail time is possible, that is not something to be taken lightly. Judges do not make such warnings casually. They make them when they believe a defendant is on a path that could lead to incarceration if the behavior continues. The fact that Judge Merchan warned Trump specifically about jail time indicates that the judge believed Trump's continued violations of the gag order were serious enough to warrant that warning. The fact that Trump continued to violate the gag order even after being fined and warned indicates that Trump either did not take the warning seriously or believed he could avoid consequences. Now let's look at the congressional subpoena situation. When Congress subpoenas someone to testify, that is a formal legal demand. Ignoring a congressional subpoena can result in criminal charges for contempt of Congress. The January 6th committee made it clear that they were serious about enforcing their subpoena. They warned Trump that he could face criminal prosecution if he refused to comply. Trump did refuse to comply. The committee moved forward with contempt proceedings. This is documented in congressional records. This is a serious matter that shows Trump's willingness to ignore legal demands from Congress. All of this combines to paint a picture of a president who does not believe the rules apply to him in the same way they apply to others. It shows a pattern of behavior where Trump violates court orders, ignores subpoenas, and faces consequences that do not seem to change his behavior. It shows that Trump has been willing to test the limits of the legal system and push boundaries that most people would not push. It shows that judges and Congress have had to take significant steps to try to enforce their authority against a sitting president. These are not small matters. These are significant challenges to the rule of law. The viral story about a judge ordering Trump to testify or face immediate jail is not accurate in its specific claim, but it is capturing a real underlying truth. Trump has faced real legal pressure. Trump has faced real consequences. Trump has been warned about jail time. The real story is serious enough without exaggeration. The real story matters because it shows that even a sitting president can face legal consequences. It shows that judges are willing to enforce their orders even against powerful defendants. It shows that the legal system can hold a president accountable, at least in some ways. But the real story also raises serious questions. Can the legal system fully hold a president accountable when that president ignores court orders? Can judges enforce their orders effectively against someone with presidential power? Will Trump face real jail time if he continues to violate court orders? Or will he be able to avoid consequences because of his position? These are important questions that deserve serious attention. They are questions about the rule of law in America. They are questions about whether anyone is above the law. They are questions that go to the heart of our constitutional system. The documented facts show that Trump has been held in contempt, fined, and warned about jail time. Those are real consequences. They are not as dramatic as immediate jail time ordered by a judge, but they are significant. They show that the legal system is functioning, at least to some degree. They show that judges are willing to hold a president accountable. They show that the rule of law still has some power in America. But they also show that enforcing court orders against a president is difficult, and that Trump has been willing to push boundaries in ways that most defendants would not.